on the press tour for John Wick. Chapter 4, Keanu Reeves was asked about working alongside Donnie Yen and Hiroyuki Sanada. He volunteered a third name, Scott Adkins. Reeves put those three in one category and himself in another. They were real martial artists. He was a movie martial artist. Adkins' technique, he added, was on another level. Scott Adkins has never had a professional fight. No sanctioned kickboxing record exists. No tournament placings have ever been produced. A fan once asked him directly about competitive experience. He answered that he had traveled a different path and that he was content not getting punched in the face too often. Both of those facts sit in the record together. The men who make a living getting hit rate him near the top of the trade. The scorecard is blank. What Reeves was rating is real and measurable, and it sits somewhere the audience rarely looks. It took 30 years to assemble. One of its main sources is a Korean actor almost nobody in the West can name. Michael Jai White was the star of Undisputed 2 in 2006. Adkins was the unknown cast as the villain. White has since described working with Adkins on his boxing technique and pushing him to show everything he had as Boyka. He also made a structural choice that changed the film. The producers wanted White's character to be a martial artist as well. White argued against it. He kept Iceman Chambers a boxer, so the character had somewhere to travel, and so one man in that ring would own the spinning kicks. A lead actor stripped his own best material out of a movie to make room for a newcomer. Forgotten Fists exists to document the people the record skipped and the credentials the record got wrong. The rest of this one takes Adkins' technique apart and names the source of each piece. Tim Mann choreographed the fights on Shadow of a Tear and on Boyka, Undisputed. He put the working process in plainer terms. He shows Adkins the choreography and Adkins has it. 1 or 2 demonstrations, then it is down. On the 4th Undisputed film, Tim Mann pushed him further into more kicks than any film he had made and handed him roughly 10 movements he had never performed. Isaac Florentine found him on a VHS tape around 1998. Florentine was running a martial arts instruction company on the side and taking demo reels from people who wanted into the movies. Most of them, by his account, were fighters who could not act. He had stopped watching. His business partner pushed one more on him, from an English kid nobody had heard of. Florentine watched the martial arts portion and registered a competent martial artist. Then a new section came up labeled screen fighting, and he stopped. That label is the whole argument. 2 separate categories sat on one tape. Only the second one got Adkins hired, 91 kilograms. That is what Adkins carried through Undisputed 2. For the third film, he came down to 88 or 89 and traded mass for definition. He has since called that his best condition on film. He stands 5'10". Florentine put him in heeled shoes to answer a producer objection that he was too short for a Russian prison champion. He was also told to grow the beard because he was too handsome for the part. The bill for that body is on the record in Adkins' own words. A torn ACL, a slipped disc, trapped nerves. He tore a muscle in his back roughly halfway through the first day of the bar fight in Shadow of a Tear. The sequence had 2 days of shooting allotted. He finished it unable to kick properly with his right leg. He rates 2 other fights above it. The closing bout with Marco Zaror in Undisputed 3 is one. The Lateef Crowder fight from the same film is the other. In that one, he ran up a turnbuckle post and came off it in an inverted tucked somersault. The John Wick damage came from wardrobe. He played Killa inside prosthetics built to read at around 300 pounds. He has described the weight dragging on his shoulders, his spine, and his lower back. Underneath it, he wore a cooling suit because the prosthetics trapped heat against him. Adkins fought Keanu Reeves inside that. Most of the people who discovered him there could not pick his actual face out of a lineup. Asked later which opponent had been harder, John Wick or the suit, he gave the suit. That injury list is an occupational record, and the occupation is not fighting. Sutton Coldfield on the northern edge of Birmingham, sometime around 1986, a 10-year-old tags along to the local judo club with his father and his older brother. The Adkins family are butchers going back generations, and Scott has credited them for the work ethic rather than for anything athletic. 2 things then landed on him in the same stretch of years. He watched Bloodsport and called his mother into the room to look at Jean-Claude Van Damme, because that was the job he wanted. Then, at 13, he was mugged on a bus. Every account of his life turns on that second event. At 14, he started Taekwondo with the Taekwondo Association of Great Britain under an instructor named Ron Sergiu. At 16, he added kickboxing under Anthony Jones. He took over his father's garage and converted it into a training room with a Bruce Lee shrine in the corner. Sergiu is the detail worth holding on to. He founded the Sutton Coldfield Taiji B Club in 1984. He was a founder member of the association and a former world and European fighting champion. Adkins learned his kicking from a man with a genuine competition record. What he came out holding was something else. By his early 20s, he had a coaching qualification where a fight record would go. He became a fully certified kickboxing instructor for the Professional Kickboxing Association, and he was teaching children. 2 of those children belonged to Tony Jordan, the writer behind EastEnders. Jordan started putting him into daytime drama. At 21, he won a place at the Webber Douglas Academy of Dramatic Art in London. He left without finishing because he could not fund the course. The only documented competitive sport anywhere in his background is athletics. He has said he represented his county at long jump and high jump at school. He puts the leap down to fast twitch fiber rather than to jump training. The signature technique is a quotation. Adkins calls it the Guyver kick. He has attributed it directly to a Korean actor named Won Jin, who performed a version of it in the 1992 Hong Kong film Operation Scorpio. Won Jin was born Kim Won Jin in Seoul in 1962. He started Taekwondo at around 7 and built an acrobatic kicking vocabulary years ahead of what the tricking scene would later formalize. A demo tape pulled him into Hong Kong. He was cast as the villain in Operation Scorpio and became a cult figure off essentially one performance. Then the industry moved to wirework and gunplay, the roles dried up, and he went home to Korea. So the most recognizable weapon in Scott Adkins' arsenal was inherited from a performer that same industry could not keep employed. This is the point the internet keeps missing. The circulating lists of his martial arts run to 11 or 12 entries: Taekwondo, Judo, Kickboxing, Karate, Ninjutsu, Capoeira, Krav Maga, Wushu, Muay Thai, Jeet Kune Do, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The list is accurate as far as it goes, and it explains very little. A man who had trained 12 arts for combat would move like a fighter. Adkins moves the way a lens wants him to, which is a separate discipline with its own masters and its own transmission line. He has said as much about the generation behind him. Trickers, in his view, need grounding in traditional basics. A jump spinning back kick has to land and has to be sold, or the audience stops believing the move would work at all. Sell is the operative verb. Fighters do not use it. The people who did use it were concentrated in one city, and Adkins spent his 20s getting to them. British television was casting him as decoration. Hong Kong was casting him as a weapon. In 2001, he landed in the Hong Kong tournament picture Extreme Challenge, with Bay Logan putting his name forward and director Stephen Tung Wai making the selection. Small parts followed in Jackie Chan's The Accidental Spy. Then came Sweetheart's Black Mask 2, City of Masks with the action choreographed by Yuen Woo-ping, then The Medallion. That run reads as an apprenticeship rather than as a filmography. Inside about 4 years, a kickboxing instructor from the West Midlands was taking direction from the men who built the fights for The Matrix. By the time he came home, his fights had been laid out by Yuen Woo-ping and by Sammo Hung's people. He has described what he took from watching. On The Medallion, he sat and counted 36 takes of a single Chan movement and called that the thing that explains Jackie Chan. On Unleashed, he watched Jet Li absorb the choreography for the drained swimming pool fight after the stunt team ran it twice. Adkins concluded that Li has a photographic memory for fight scenes. He was also examined. He has said his brief fight with Chan on The Medallion was a test of whether he was good enough and that he passed it. Years later, Hollywood used him for the same reason. On X-Men Origins, Wolverine, he stood in for Ryan Reynolds as Weapon 11, the first screen version of Deadpool. Reynolds handled the close-ups and the simple stunts. Adkins performed the complicated movement. None of that is combat. All of it belongs to the skill Reeves was separating out when he split the real from the cinematic. It has a curriculum, and Adkins served the apprenticeship for it, which leaves the one line on his record that nobody can agree on. Most sources put a Taekwondo black belt on him at 19, 6 years after he started with Sergio. His Wikipedia entry says it. Much of the martial arts press repeats it. His IMDb profile says something else entirely. A red belt in Taekwondo, 1 grade below black, plus a black belt in kickboxing. Both versions have circulated for years. Neither has been backed publicly by a certificate or an association record. What is verifiable is the PKA instructor certification and roughly 3 decades of unbroken training. What is absent is a single competitive result of any kind. Adkins has never claimed otherwise. Speaking to Interview magazine in 2012, he drew the line himself. Professional fighters, he said, accept getting punched in the face, and more to the point, they want to punch other people. He described his own interest as the movies, the dexterity of performers, the choreography. He trains alongside professional fighters, so he knows what the job demands, and he has called it harder than acting. He has also explained how he handles opponents from entirely different systems. On Triple Threat, sharing the screen with Tony Jaa and Iko Uwais, he said the answer is rhythm. Every fighter has a rhythm of attack, and once he has that rhythm, he knows when the punch is coming. He added the obvious thing out loud. It is not a real fight. It is choreographed. The sharper admission came in 2012. Someone asked how fighting Van Damme compared with fighting Dolph Lundgren. Adkins said he had to dumb it down. for Van Damme. The two generations work at different speeds and his own runs closer to Hong Kong tempo. That is a man thinking in eras of choreography. A fighter thinks in openings. On June 22, 2017, at the Shanghai Oriental Arts Center, Jackie Chan Action Movie Week closed out the 20th Shanghai International Film Festival. Best Action Movie Actor went to Scott Adkins for Boyka, Undisputed. Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, and Won Jin were in the room. Chan used the same night to announce a stuntman working committee for the protection of action performers. Then came the chain of recommendation. Donnie Yen asked for Adkins personally for Ip Man 4, the finale. Adkins has said it was Yen who then told Chad Stahelski to cast him in John Wick, Chapter 4. Isaac Florentine told The Hollywood Reporter that Adkins should have been James Bond. He should have been Batman. The grounds were simple. He can act, and he can move like nobody else with no doubles standing in. Which returns to the sentence Reeves said out loud. What he was rating is the ability to execute a technically extreme movement at full speed and on a first take. At the correct angle, in the correct rhythm. For a lens. After 2 decades of ACL tears and slipped discs. That is a craft with a lineage, and the lineage runs through Won Jin and Yuen Woo-ping and Sammo Hung. The belt itself remains unsettled. 2 versions of his Taekwondo grade sit side by side in public sources, one black and one red, and nobody on either side has produced the certificate. So how lethal is Scott Adkins? Inside a ring, against a trained competitor, nobody knows, and he has been the most honest man in that conversation. In front of a camera, the people who hire him place him at the top of the Western field, and they keep saying so on the record, which leaves the harder question, the one Florentine keeps asking in public. An industry that hires him for 18-day shoots on $1 million budgets has never once handed him a $100 million picture. The window for Hollywood to build a major theatrical franchise around him is closing. He turned 50 in June 2026. Hollywood has spent 20 years hiring Scott Adkins as proof that an action star can really move. It still has not trusted him to be the star